Hello, and welcome to today's webinar at Notes Code. Thank you for your time in attending this webinar. Our topic today is maximizing IBM Traveler uptime, and we give a special thank you to RPR Wyatt for preparing this webinar and talking about some of the items that you should be aware of about your Traveler server and some other items that will help you to make sure everything is running properly on your on your Traveler server. So our presentation today is, as I mentioned, will be by RPR Wyatt, and just some housekeeping notes before I turn the time over to them is that there will be a question and answer section at the end of the presentation. So if you do have a question that comes to mind as the webinar is going, please open up your GoToWebinar control panel and type in the question in the questions area, and that will queue the question up, and we'll be ready to answer those at the end of the normal presentation. Also, as a reminder, we will be recording this, so if anyone in your staff or coworkers or friends in the industry were not able to attend, you can certainly pass along the link that we'll send out to you later to this recorded webinar. Okay, so again, thank you to Jim Engel, Vice President at RPR Wyatt, and Alan Forbes, the Vice President of Development. They will be your presenters today, and without further ado, Jim, I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Welcome, everybody, and happy holidays. Thank you for taking the time to find our invitation among all your Amazon for sale emails. Really do appreciate you taking the time to join us. Today's topic will be maximizing IBM Traveler uptime, a very popular one. Please allow me to share with you that our presenter today will be Alan Forbes, who is Vice President of Product Management at RPR Wyatt. Just want to mention that Alan will also be presenting this upcoming 2016 IBM Connect conference down in Orlando, Florida, not at the Disney World. It'll be January 31st and February 1st and 2nd, the conference. RPR Wyatt will be exhibiting there, and we hope to see you there. Now, if you would, please welcome Alan and maximizing
Awesome.
IBM Traveler
Thank
today.
You, Jim. You guys, I'm sharing the right monitor. You have the slide on the screen there? Just to check.
Yep, we see it, Alan.
Awesome.
Top 5 things.
Yes. Okay, the top 5 things. So the human brain is optimized for lists, and top 5, top 10, top 7 things tend to go well. In fact, in the IBM Connect show, I'm presenting the top 10 things that can go wrong with Traveler. So if anybody has something that recently happened in the Traveler server that they think the IBM community should know about, please email that to me. I've got about 8 so far. Today what I'm going to do is cover the top 5, and the top 5 come from feedback that we've gotten from the various IBM administrators that we deal with on a regular basis. So basically the way this presentation is going to go is I'm going to do a little bit of theory at the beginning. I'm going to walk you through these top 5 things and how you can detect them manually using the tools that IBM provides, and then I'm going to switch over and do a little bit of demo of VitalSigns and show you how we basically free you from having to do this stuff. So the top 5 things that can go wrong would be having insufficient HTTP threads, running in constraint mode, having a hung Traveler servlet, having your status change from green to yellow or yellow to red and not noticing, and finally having insufficient bandwidth between the Traveler server and the mail servers. So number 1 would be insufficient HTTP threads. Now, mobile devices talk to Traveler through HTTP, and in general, every device consumes at least 1 HTTP thread. There are some exceptions to that. My understanding is that BlackBerry devices can sometimes consume up to 2, but they're working on that. But in general, IBM says that you need at least 1.2 times the number of devices for threads to have enough HTTP threads to successfully service the number of devices that you have. Now, the maximum number of threads that you have is set in the server document in the name and address book, and the default value for 64-bit servers is 400 threads. And typically what happens when the server is first installed, people just take all the defaults. There's not that many devices on there. The thing is just smoking fast all the time. And over time, more devices grow and grow. and you don't really realize it, and the number of threads can sneak up on you. Now, this is particularly important this time of year because Santa may be dropping off new toys for lots of your end users, and you may see a sudden spike in the number of devices that are connecting to your Traveler servers in the next 30 days or so. So when you run out of HTTP threads, the Apple devices might see a message like, cannot connect to server. Android devices have the same symptom, but sometimes they see an actual error code, 503, server busy. And where it seems to be the most noticeable is when an end user has an attachment and they want to download it into their mobile device. So synchronizing, email contacts and some of that stuff tends to happen in the background, so they might not notice it. But when you're actually on a specific message and you're waiting to see a spreadsheet or something, when you have insufficient HTTP threads, in that case, the end users tend to notice it because it's kind of right in their face. So what happens in that case is the server CPU is diverted from its primary task of doing device synchronization to juggling HTTP sessions. So it's like, okay, I have 500 requests and I have 400 threads, so who can I drop? Who's the one that's been either waiting the longest, I'm going to service that person next, or who's been on the longest that I can drop comfortably or has been inactive, who's next in the queue. And as the problem gets worse, the CPU gets increasingly diverted over to that, and it gets slower and slower. So to make sure that you have enough HTTP threads, you need to know two things. You need to know how many devices you have, and you need to know what your current setting is for the HTTP threads. So to find out how many devices you have, you can go to the Domino remote console, and this can be live or just the normal console. I think the normal one is easier because you don't have all these things scrolling by all the time. And you just type the command showstat traveler.push.devices.total, and you'll get back something like this. It'll say, push.devices total equals and some number. So imagine, if you will, that this Traveler server has 225 devices on it. In that case, you would need at least 270 HTTP threads, because according to the advanced calculation here, 1.2 times 225 is 270. Now you might be tempted to say, well, if I need at least 270, why don't I just set it to 800 or 1,000 or 5,000 so I never have to worry about it? Well, it doesn't quite work that way, because as you're saying, this is how many threads I can consume, and the Traveler server allocates a certain amount of memory to service those, and you don't want to really divert more memory than you have to. So the second thing is you need to know, okay, so now I know how many devices I have and therefore how many threads I need. Well, how many do I have? And the way to find that out is to issue the remote console command showstat HTTP workers, and that will return a number like this: HTTP workers equals 300, using my hypothetical example of 225 devices. Since you would need 270 threads and 300 is greater than that, then this server would be fine. If you find that you're right on the edge, then you might experience intermittent problems. And if you're way over the limit, then the problems tend to be more pronounced and more regular. You end up having unhappy users fairly regularly. So if you find that you do not have enough HTTP threads, what you have to do is go into the address book, find the server document for the Traveler server, go to the HTTP tab and find Internet Protocols, number of active threads, change that number, and then you also need to go to the maximum number of concurrent network sessions, and that number has to be at least equal to or greater than the number of active threads, because the threads also consume network sessions. And then after you've done that, you just need to tell HTTP restart, and on startup it reads those values and it allocates the threads. So that's how you detect and resolve that particular problem. The next thing is something called resource constraint mode, and this is a feature, if you will, of IBM Traveler, which is it can detect when it's running out of memory or it's having issues with database connections and so forth, and it will go into constraint mode. And when it's in constraint mode, it will not accept any new device sync or prime sync threads to initiate. But the existing threads will be allowed to complete. So this is kind of a tricky one to diagnose sometimes, because you'll have end users that are perfectly fine and other ones that are trying to connect and they're getting a service not available error. The symptoms tend to be the same as item issue number 1 of insufficient HTTP threads, but the root cause is different. It may be not that you have insufficient HTTP threads, but you have insufficient system memory or something. So constraint mode is a useful one to know about. You can find out whether you're in constraint mode or not by going to the Traveler server and executing the command showstat Traveler.Constraint.State. And that will either return 1 or 0, 1 meaning that it is in a constrained state and 0 meaning that it is not. Because it is a numeric stat value, I believe you can set up a DDM alert for this. So sometimes when that happens, Traveler will fix itself. In fact, that is the goal of constraint mode, is to give the Traveler server a moment or two to catch its breath, catch up on its workload. In theory, it will finish the syncs that it's doing. That will free up memory, and then the problem will go away. And other times that doesn't quite work out as designed, and you have to do a restart. So you might find that if it's in constraint mode for an extended period of time, and where the actual cutoff there is kind of more of an art form than a hard number. But you'll know it. The users will be complaining. So then a server restart is required there. The next thing that can go wrong is having a hung Traveler servlet. Now, the Traveler servlet is really the core of Traveler. End users think of it really just for new device provisioning. That's the URL that you would send the users to when they have their new gadget. It's HTTP or HTTPS hostname / Traveler, and then it will prompt the user to identify with a username and password. And if everything is cool, then you should get something back like this with this message in green here. It'll say IBM Traveler server is available. That is dependent. The exact string that you get is dependent on the browser settings. It will automatically translate it into other languages, and they've also have tweaked that exact message over the years for when they called it Notes Traveler and so forth. But if you see the message in green and some variation of it is available, then that's good news. And there's a number of messages that you could get that would be shown in red that would indicate that there's a problem of one kind or another. And just to wrap up on the Traveler servlet, that would be something you want to periodically check to make sure that that is constantly coming back with this available information. Okay, so the number 4 would be a change in state. This is another nice feature of Traveler, and the Traveler server makes a self-assessment of itself of whether it thinks it is healthy or not. And you can go to the Domino console and enter the command showstat Traveler.Status.State, and that will give you back one of 3 colors of green, yellow, or red, with green being the best and red being the worst. This is a value that you cannot trap in DDM because it is a text value, not a numeric value. But I believe that there's a variation of that where you can do Traveler.Status.State.Severity and get back 0, 1, or 2. We do have one of my colleagues looking into that to see if, in fact, that's something that you can trap in DDM, but I'm not positive. But you could look into that. So the Traveler status of either red, green, or yellow has some reasons behind it. So if you go to the Domino live console, you can't do this on the remote console, tell Traveler status, you'll get back kind of a paragraph looking like this, and it will say, this is how long I've been running, this is my last sync, and here are the reasons why I might think that I'm yellow, and here are the reasons that I might think that I am red. The bold is something that I added, but basically then it gives you the summary at the bottom. My overall status is that I'm red. Now, did I delete a slide? I guess I did. So beginning in 901.4, I believe it was, IBM exposed those status reasons to the remote console as well. So you can now actually query a server from a tool and say, show me the red reasons and show me the yellow reasons. And we've incorporated that into the product. When I get to the demo part of it, I'll show you what we did with that. So the number 5, the last one on my top 5 list here, is communication with mail files. So typically a Traveler server is set up to have the mail files on separate mail servers, not actually host the mail files on the Traveler server itself. And when that's the case, then there would be any number of mail servers that the Traveler server has to reach out to get the mail data. And the network latency between the Traveler server and the mail servers can affect the performance for the subset of users who are on the particular mail server. So if you go to the console command and you say show stat Traveler, there's a whole bunch of statistics that start with Traveler DCA and have the word histogram in them. And what they try to convey, which I think is a little difficult, but it's saying that for each mail server that it talks to, it'll have the server name in the last little bit of the statistic name. There's a number of device synchronizations that occurred with that mail server that took between a certain time frame. So for this particular Traveler server, it has done 12,580 device syncs that took less than a second with the mail server DOM1. And it did 21 device synchronizations that took between 1 and 2 seconds with that server, and so forth. So there's different intervals, between 2 and 5 seconds, 5 and 10 seconds, and so forth. And then it repeats that whole set with each mail server that the Traveler server is talking to. So now we're looking at the DOM2 server, and this server did 22,339 device synchronizations that took less than a second, and it did 104 that took between 1 and 2 seconds. The thing that makes this difficult, this particular statistic, is like many Domino statistics, it is cumulative from the time that the server started. So I can see here that 12 synchronizations took between 2 and 5 seconds, and 5 took between 10 and 30 seconds. But I have no idea if that was 5 minutes ago or whether that was 5 months ago, depending on how long the server has been up. I think this is virtually impossible for humans to make sense of in my case. So really what's important is remembering the increment. So if I know that 5 minutes ago I checked on this Traveler server and it said the number of synchronizations to this mail server, I'm looking at the line in red here, was 98. And then 10 minutes later I ask it again and it's still 98, and it's still 98, and it's still 98, and it's still 98. I know that none of those slower synchronizations are happening today. They were sometime in the past. So really what's the trick is remembering the previous value and recording the delta. We also discovered last night that IBM changed the name of the statistic slightly and inserted the word Java in the middle of it there, but we figured that out just in the nick of time to do this this webinar. So I would say all of these things you can do on your own, but they are labor intensive, and I would say they're awkward at best. So it's really not ideal for humans to be doing this on a regular basis. Now, VitalSigns performs all of these tests and many more on a user-defined schedule. And that could be, every 5 minutes or every 8 minutes or every 10 minutes or whatever you think. And anytime it detects any one of these issues, that will send out an alert to the right people. And our alert mechanism is now at the point where it is highly refined. So you could say that if it's this subset of Traveler servers and it's this time of day, then it goes to this group. And if it's later in the day, then it goes to the team in India. And if it's later in the day, it goes somewhere else. So you can do all kinds of follow the sun stuff, and you can have the alerts go out to the person primarily responsible for a given data center, and you can have escalations and so forth. And all of this stuff gets put into a nice little intuitive dashboard, and it's highly available. So getting back to the top 10 reason number one of having insufficient HTTP threads, what VitalSigns does is it will periodically query, hey, how many devices you have, hey, how many HTTP threads are you configured to use, multiplying it through the complicated 1.2 formula. Are you do you have sufficient HTTP threads, or are you approaching a limit, or are you over the limit? And it also tells you what's the peak number of HTTP threads that you actually used at any one time, which is useful. It also, with every scan cycle, it will ask for the value of the resource constraint stat and put that in a real nice, simple pass-fail box here. It will also query the Traveler servlet. We do that by doing an HTTP GET request, basically, or an HTTPS request, depending on how you have your Traveler server configured. And then we pass it a set of user credentials, and then we look for the string Traveler is available. And that either constitutes a pass or a fail. And if we get something other than the pass back, then we'll even tell you what it's reporting instead. The Traveler.Status.State, we also color code. That's just basically taking that console command and sticking the value into the box. This is what I was looking for earlier, which is that the status reasons are now available. This is something that for a couple of years in a row down in Orlando, I would corner the IBM Traveler team and beg for this because the fact is when it was only available via live console, that meant only humans could request the information, not tools. And eventually my persistence paid off, for which if there's anybody from IBM on the call, I am forever grateful. Thank you very much for that. What that means is now VitalSigns can query for the actual status reasons, and when we get the reasons, we can stick them up on our dashboard, and we can also pass them out in the alert message that we send out to the administrator. So for example, if a Traveler server suddenly goes red because it's running out of disk space, we'll send the alert out to the administrators and say, hey, your Traveler server DOM1 just went red, and the reason is because it's about to run out of disk space, which makes it a whole lot more actionable, in my opinion. So I'm psyched about that one. And the last of the top 5 here is communication with mail servers. Basically what we try to do is we grab all of these statistics every time we put them in internally what's called a pivot table, and we record the delta. And what we show in the dashboard itself is not the big 12,580 number, but in fact, what is the difference from the scan previous to that, so that you can see the trends over the course of the day. And you can see what's current, not necessarily what happened a month ago, which may not really be relevant anymore. So I would say you can try it out yourself. We love to do personalized demos, and we love people to do evals. It's a lot more compelling when you see it in your own environment. But despite that, I'm going to jump over to our environment here and do a quick demo of this. But anybody who sees this and says, wow, I'd like to try that out, Jim Engel is standing by. and happy to set up an eval for you, and there's no obligation, of course. Okay, so here's my dashboard. You sure can't help but notice that it's in a browser. It is a 100% browser application. It's built on top of IIS and SQL Server, and it uses the Notes client DLLs, and it uses all kinds of components to take the stuff that IBM provides in sort of a raw format, and we put it in a format that's very easy for humans to understand, and so forth. So up at the very top here, I have this summary data here, which tells me of all the servers that I'm monitoring, how many have no issues at all, how many are completely dead, how many have an issue of one kind or another. We do monitor lots more than just Domino. In the IBM family, we also monitor WebSphere and SameTime and are adding connections. We also monitor Microsoft on-prem and SharePoint and Office 365 and all that good stuff. But I'm going to stay on topic. And so of all these devices, the subset of those that are Domino are shown in this little group box here. And what I could do is just click on the word Domino, and that will give me a list of all of my Domino servers, regardless of what their current status is. So everything would be grouped together. And for those of you who already have VitalSigns, who are on this call, thank you for your business. Just a quick preview of a very cool feature that's coming in the next release is in this what we call the status list here. It's generic, not Traveler specific, it's just server specific. We show the server name, the overall status, some information about the last time we talked to it, the information on pending and dead and held mail and memory and CPU and so forth. In the next release, we're also adding this column called disk status, and a server that's got the gray box means it's not configured to monitor disks for that server. If it is, you'll get the overall status of OK, meaning every server, every disk on that drive which has been monitored is under its threshold, and you can mouse over and see the exact information for it. And if any server has an issue at all, you can mouse over that and see that. So that's an even faster way than the disk health. So what I could do here is I could click on this row of information and jump directly into a deep dive on this particular server. Or what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go over to Server Health, Traveler Health, and show you a slight variation of this same information. It's still a grid. It's still underneath it is the same Domino server. But what we have here instead is information that is specific to Traveler itself. So it's the version of Traveler. This is 9.1.8. This other one is 9.04. Whether it is running in constraint mode or not, it looks like my status codes of yellow, green, or red disappeared just a moment or two ago before I started this webinar. That's a classic Bill Gates moment, as we call it. I'm sure it'll come back up in the next moment or two. Some information about how many devices you have and the number of syncs that it's done. When was the last time we talked to that particular server? I'm in the Eastern time zone, so you'll see that's the 15th at 1:27. My time is 1:30, so that's within the last 3 minutes or so. We check the Traveler servlet. We can figure out automatically whether the server is HA or not. And if you want us to, we can also do a test on the backend data store. So whether it's DB2 or SQL Server, we can run a query against the backend and make sure that it's returning data, so we can test that that device is also up. And then, as I showed in some of the slides, making sure that you have enough HTTP threads, that HTTP is in fact running. And then this last column here, I didn't mention in the slides, that's something called the Devices API. And the Devices API is something that we use to query the Traveler server for what types of devices it has running. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and click on this row here, and that's going to give me a drill down into the server itself. Regardless of whether it's a Traveler server or even a Domino server, we monitor Active Directory and so forth. The first tab for every server is always the overall tab, and we'll show you the last 24 hours of response time compared with the threshold. We'll show you everything we know about the disk drives, even if you have not configured it to send alerts based on disk space or not. We still present it. We show the consumption of memory and CPU and the number of users and whether it has dead, pending, or held mail. We have a tab called the Health Assessment. Now, of course, different server types have a different battery of tests that would be passed against them. In the case of a Domino server, we'll check to make sure that it's responding to the notes client, that it has enough memory. If you told us to watch over specific server tasks, we'll make sure that the tasks are there and running. We'll check for dead mail, pending mail, and so forth. We'll check for the drive space. If it's Traveler, we have a set of Traveler tests that we do. So we'll check the status code, the constraint mode, whether it has HTTP threads, whether it has device syncs, making sure that the number of device syncs is continually going up between scans, and that the Traveler servlet is running. Now, all that Traveler specific stuff is presented in the Traveler Health tab. Here you can see over the last 24 hours the number of device syncs, so you can see where your peak times are and how high those spikes are. You can see the number of HTTP threads that were consumed alongside of that. This is another preview for upcoming release. We had a couple of customers request to get a graphical representation of the memory consumption of Traveler. So there's the allocated Java memory and C memory. In fact, I was just in a different webinar earlier today presented by IBM when they were talking about the fact that you do have to watch over these, and they showed sort of an awkward, tell command that you have to do, and we're saying that this is how you watch over that. And some of our internal folks who were on the call were Skyping to each other. Yeah, or you could just look at our graph on the dashboard. So I think in general, all the stuff that IBM provides, they tend to provide more as a raw data kind of thing. And what we try to do is take the raw data and present it in a way that's a little more human friendly. So the last thing we do here is show the different mail servers that the Traveler server talks to and how is it doing at the moment. So this is all green because these numbers are absolutely perfect. I couldn't have asked for anything better for my demo. It's showing that in the last scan cycle, so within the last 10 minutes, this server did 312 synchronizations, all of which took under a second, and this server, the number of synchronizations which required a reach out to this mail server and this mail server, they were all under a second. And so all of these are 0, so that's why those are all green, because you don't want to see numbers here, and the numbers that are here are also green because that's where you do want to see the numbers spiking up. So there's a deep dive into a particular Traveler server. We also have the Traveler Health page, which is where we started off from here. We also have 2 ways of representing mobile users. We have the mobile users page, and here what we do is we query that Traveler Devices API, which again IBM kind of provides as a big long JSON stream. We put it into a nice little grid here so that you can manipulate it. You can drag and drop the columns around and do some cool things. You can also export it out to Microsoft Excel if you wanted to do further manipulations with it. And you'll notice that there are some users that have a little star next to them. And of course, I have a little star. And Jim does, since he's on the call as well. Basically, what this means is a extra attention that's paid to those special users that everybody seems to have in their organization. Executives that just can't stand to be disconnected from their mail for even a moment. We'll watch over them in a separate thread and keep an extra eye on those devices to make sure that they are synchronizing properly. and I'll show you where those show up on a separate page here. But the same information that we have in a grid here, you can also see it represented graphically in a couple of different ways. So, all right, so what are all the different operating systems that we're supposed to be supporting, and how many devices do people have? What are all the unique devices that we have? Show me the devices that have synchronized in the last, so many minutes or so forth. And this one tends to be particularly popular when we're doing on-site demos where we're reviewing the findings of, show me all the users that have more than one device. Now, this is our internal data, so it's not too bad. I have two. I have an iPad and an iPhone. That's not so bad. We were doing a demo with a large consulting company that will remain nameless, and the user with the most devices internally was a guy that had 11. So that was pretty funny. And actually, there were quite a few. So it didn't then drop dramatically down to 2. Went from 11 to 9 and 7 and 6. And they had a lot of people that were real gadget junkies. So that's an interesting little tidbit of management information. And again, something to be aware of as we go into Christmas is that you're going to see a number of these little devices tend to take a quick spike there. So the last thing I want to show as part of my prepared remarks here would be the page that we call the key user devices. And the key user devices is showing just the devices that have a little star next to them and how long has it been in minutes since the gadget last synced. And I actually do have my iPad right here, and I'm gonna take a real risk here, and I'm gonna check my mail from my iPad and see if that number updates right away, which I suspect that it will. I have not touched it in quite some time here, so we'll see if we can get that to trigger a synchronization here, and as we take some questions, maybe that screen is going to refresh, and you'll see that that number jumps down. But this is particularly compelling for the executives that you need to go to get a budget for a monitoring tool, because what you can say as part of your pitch is, it's not just helping me. There it goes. I love that. But you can say it's more than just helping me, but it's also helping me to provide better service to those users that are particularly dependent on that. So you can always watch over, the president's iPhone and make sure that that's constantly syncing, so that person doesn't get caught somewhere calling you upset. You can be on top of it. So there it is. That concludes my presentation. And Scott, if we want to open it up to Q&A, and maybe if you have any poll questions that are queued up there, you can fire some of those off as well.
Perfect. We do have a couple of quick poll questions, just out of curiosity here for our industry, just kind of fun with the presentation. And while you're getting ready to enter in some questions, we'll do a couple of quick poll questions as well. So now that everything is kind of moving into cloud-based, we want to just kind of see where we're at currently in the cloud. So I'm going to launch the first poll questions. Is what segment of your environment will be in the cloud by the end of 2016? So if you have an idea of what is happening.
I see that. A little thing pops up on the control panel there and says poll open.
Yep. So it's running, and everyone but you, Alan, since you're sharing your screen, sees the
obviously, yeah, exactly.
sees it.
Yeah.
But
assuming my screen is still being shared, you'll see that this key user devices page refreshes on its own, and there's a thread running in the background. It's constantly just checking over those magic magic devices that are.
We'll come back to your screen in just a moment, so I'll share the results with everyone.
Oh, okay.
So this is typical of the dominant environments. We're getting mail over to the cloud, but of course, applications is a totally different thing. So this is right on. Let's do one more poll, and then we'll come back to your screen. Okay, we do see your screen now again, Alan. So we still see
I can't tell when it's coming or not.
That's right.
Okay.
There might
That's
be
fine.
a
I,
what the audience sees on your go-to webinar control panel. It'll give you like a thumbnail.
okay.
But yeah, so we do
I just
see
got
that your
lucky that
iPad.
my iPod happened to not scan
Ah,
just in advance, and then I pulled down, checked the new mail thing, and then boom, the thing refreshed. So
yep, it's there. So all right, well let's do a couple of Traveler polls real quick. So the first one is, are you satisfied with IBM Traveler? So yes or no.
that's a tough question.
And we do have a couple of IBMers online with us, so we'll see how we're doing. So half of us have voted already. Give us a couple more seconds. So hey, look at this. Let me share this one with you. So 100% of us are voting yes. We're satisfied with Traveler. That's good news.
Nice.
Good to hear.
Traveler is pretty solid. It is a nice.
It is pretty solid. Yeah.
It's priced right too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's take one more Traveler, just to see how important Traveler is inside your environment. Let's do that. So in terms of how critical it is to your workday and your company's workday, is it low, medium, or high?
I predict 100% high. The envelope, please.
The envelope is waiting for a few more to vote. We got an audience that's still awake, Alan. You did a really good presentation.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, here comes
amazing what caffeine will pull off.
And
100%.
You were right.
All right.
So there we go. All right, so let's jump over to a couple of questions then. So if you'll leave your screen up there, it gives us something pretty to look at. So the first question is, what is required to install on the server to get this type of reporting and monitoring?
Well, assuming that the question means what has to be installed on the Domino server, absolutely nothing. So you actually don't have to make any changes to the production environment. The question is around the monitoring station itself. The monitoring station just works as an end user in terms of from the perspective of the Domino server. So it can be a physical box or it can be a VM. In fact, most of our customers have it running on a VM. You do have to have the Notes client installed on that VM, and it can't be running while VitalSigns is running. So for that reason, you can't just do an eval, on your own workstation and still expect to be able to, be checking your mail and running different Notes apps during the day. It has to be a dedicated box, and pretty much everything else that it requires we install automatically as part of our install process. We have a couple of installers that installs the prerequisites to make sure that the .NET framework is there and IIS and so forth, and installs SQL Server Express if it's not there. And it pretty much is maybe 20 to 30-minute process from the time that you start off with a machine with a Notes client on it to the point when you can go to our import servers wizard, and it will query your address book and pull all the Domino servers in for you automatically.
Excellent. And what can you do in terms of seeing VitalSigns or reviewing VitalSigns from a mobile device?
From a mobile device, depending on the size of it, if it's an iPad class device, I would say just use the regular app itself because it is 100% browser-based. If you want a specific mobile device, we do have a native iPhone app that's available in the Apple Store for free. And if you just go to YouTube and type in RPRY at VitalSigns mobile app, there's a maybe 3-minute demo I did of it. But it's important to point out that you do not need to be looking at the dashboard all day long. And you don't need to have it on your phone open looking at that all day long. The idea of VitalSigns really is it's one of these kind of set and forget things. You query it, you set it up, you tell it which servers to monitor, what the different thresholds are, who the alerts should go out to, and so forth. And from that point forward, if something goes wrong, it's going to it's going to alert you. And
Okay.
Joe, if you happen to be on the call, if you could check the email on your phone, maybe we could see that last overdue mark disappear on the top there.
Okay, great. Next question. So, how fast does VitalSigns respond to any threshold issues, and do you have examples of where that's actually helped the company?
Well, the screen that I have on here right now is a good example of it. It's constantly polling in the background, and it is constantly updating the dashboard. And as soon as it detects a condition, it's gonna send the alert out. We've had I'd say no shortage of cases where the person ran VitalSigns and found something that they weren't aware of. In fact, just last week we did an upgrade to one of our existing customers. We won't mention in case he's on the call, but headquarters in Paris, and they have some Traveler servers that are in an HA pool, and they wanted to upgrade one of the Traveler servers. And so basically what you do in that case is you go to the console and you say tell Traveler unavailable, and that signals to the servers in the pool that this particular one is not available, so that the users fail over to the other one. And then once all the users have been redirected to the other server in the pool, then you can take it down and you can do an upgrade and so forth, and it doesn't affect any of the end users. And they took the thing down and they did the Windows patches and upgraded to the latest Traveler and brought it back up, but somehow the person who did it forgot the last step of tell Traveler available. And we were looking at the Traveler health page, and the graph showing the number of users on there and device syncs, and it was just a flat line. And he was like, that can't be. He's like, we've got 2,000 servers on that pool. And he said, VitalSigns are wrong. I'm like, I don't think so. I said, you might want to check that. And sure enough, he said, stop. Stop the demo. I got to go check this out right now. And he starts poking around, and sure enough, found out that the server was tagged as unavailable. And it had been a couple of weeks that it had been in that state, and nobody even noticed it. So the good news is that had not affected any end users, but if the one server that was up had a problem, it would have had the failover bit would have failed, even though the server was perfectly fine, just because it had been tagged in that way. So that was a lucky find. And Joe, thank you for checking your mail on there. You'll see that the chart there has got flipped to all green, that none of our key devices are overdue in terms of sync.
Excellent. All right. Just checking to see if there's any last questions. We'll do a last call for questions. We're coming up.
All right. Yeah, I think we're on time here.
Yep, we're still on time.
Jim, if you want to make a pitch for anybody who wants to try it out.
Always be delighted to see.
Cool.
Yeah. No, I think the folks know that we're more than ready to provide a demo for their insights so that they can see what the product capabilities are, and we'd be delighted to, of course, apply a version of VitalSigns to their environment that would match up with their needs, whether it be on-premise or in the cloud. We'd be delighted.
Yeah, it's always more interesting when you're looking at your own, executives and your own server there.
Precisely. Blood is always dangerous. Your blood is most dangerous.
Exactly.
All right, Scott. Thank you very much for hosting this. I appreciate the chance to get in front of, some of your audience there.
You're welcome, and thank you for doing the presentation, preparing all of this, and hopefully your presentation to Connect Ed goes just as well as this one did.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Anybody in the audience that's coming to Connect Ed, please come see me. And if there's any particular Traveler horror stories that you had that you want to share with me to share with the rest of the IBM community, I promise I won't say it was you.
You'll remain anonymous.
Yes, unless you want credit for it, of course.
Yep. There you go.
Folks. All right.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.